Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Trailer Park. And happy to say that everybody's here again this week. Yay! Although Morgan was a little iffy this morning because some fool took out a utility pole in her internet like last night. Or no, Friday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually Friday, and they're like, yeah, we can't get it fixed until Monday, and it's going to be an all-day appointment. It'll probably be like 4 p.m. by the time we can even get there. And I was just like, awesome, this is great. And all my online lectures for bar exam prep are all online, so I was just kind of just sitting at home doing crossword puzzles.
I was like, you're going to give me the name of the person who hit the pole, and I'm going to go to their house, and they're going to give me their internet for the entire weekend.
Yeah, and I'm going to eat their food, and
they're going to make me whatever I want all weekend, and they'll give me like wine or beer, and yeah.
make myself at home.
Exactly. I get the master bedroom. You bastards could sleep on the couch.
There we go. But yeah, I got that fixed. The guy came back a lot earlier than expected, so got that fixed. So yay, I'm pretty much back on track now, but still bar exam prep is the worst as it continues to be.
Well, M.M. Mirel says online bar exam prep. Man, I did it the old-fashioned way. Drove to the university.
That's Deanna, by the way.
Oh, it's Deanna. Oh, hi, Deanna. Oh, yes. Now I'm looking. I can see the little picture. Hi, Deanna. Yes, Deanna.
Yeah, the closest one that's doing a DC bar prep, though, to me is in Vanderbilt at Nashville. So, and I don't have spend the summer in Nashville kind of money. So I'm doing online.
Yes. And Trav is there. Hello, Trav. Yay. Alrighty. And of course, all the way from Pennsylvania, Beth is here again. Good evening,
Greetings,
Beth.
fellow Earthlings. Or should I say possibly reptilians?
I almost made a tinfoil hat, but some people may know I had a bit of vertigo issues earlier this year, and I finally got around to getting it looked at, like not me, but like getting to a doctor, because we have a shortage of specialists and yada, yada, yada. Still, free healthcare is better, so bite me, all of you right-wing nut jobs. So I was scheduled for an MRI, and I thought that would be great if I get like a little piece of tinfoil stuck in my hair and I'm in the fucking MRI machine. That would not be good. So I'm like, I think I'll just not do that for tonight.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah. Well, anyway, joining us this weekend, I'm not even sure what state Mike comes from, but Mike Bohler is our conspiracy expert for this evening. So good evening, Mike.
Hello, everyone. Speaking to you from southwest of Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, Chicago. You're not too far from me then. I'm up by Toronto.
Cool.
So I visited Chicago in 1996. It was fun.
Actually, was I in Detroit at the time?
Oh, you're even closer.
Because I do a lot of traveling for work. I've been all over the U.S. and did do a tour there in Detroit. And I so wanted to cross over the border, but I don't have a passport. And the Illinois driver's license won't get me across the border. So
yeah,
screw you at Homeland Security.
Yeah, well, the thing is, and this is the quirky part, you could actually come into Canada without a passport.
We just can't back. I used to live behind the Peace Bridge in Buffalo. I used to walk over to Canada on the weekends. I can't do that now. Well, I can, as Deb said, I just wouldn't be able to get back in.
Well, when I was in university, one of my floor mates, she was from a town called Port Colborne, which is near Niagara Falls. And she worked, Niagara Falls in summers the whole time. So there was an outlet mall in Lewiston, New York. And we used to drive over to Lewiston all the time. And and when we used to go, they didn't even look at your ID. Like if you look shifty, then they wanted to see your ID. We would just go over and we'd wear some really crappy clothes and some really shitty shoes. We'd go to the outlet mall, buy all kinds of stuff, throw out our clothes and wear it home. So we didn't declare anything. We'd go over for gas. We'd go over for dinner. It was ridiculous. And they never even asked your name. Like you could just like go over for an hour or even like 20 minutes to buy gas and come home. And
well,
it was,
I know for hockey, it used to be, where are you going? Welland or Oakville or Toronto or what for? Hockey game. Okay, bye. That was it.
yeah,
And we
yeah.
were, on weekends, it would be Friday, Saturday, and some Sundays, but usually Sundays were home games for us. So, I mean, yeah, it's crazy now.
It's changed just a little.
Just a little.
Well, Mike, one of these days you're just going to have to get a passport and come the hell up here.
I so want to. It's, I spent 3 years in Detroit, and I'm like, it'd be so cool to get I don't know, maybe now it's not, but I do have this thing about smoking a Cuban cigar, and the only place I can get is in Canada.
Yep.
And,
yep.
Because, things like that, kind of bucket list things, just do it once and see if it's really worth it. And I was there once as a kid. We drove into Windsor. I mean, a family vacation.
Yeah, Windsor's not that great of a place to visit.
Well, I thought it was pretty neat. I mean, it was where we drove through, it kind of looked kind of European. So I don't know if there's a part of that town.
Oh, I don't know. I've only ever scuzzy bits of Windsor, but maybe I don't know. But
in the 60s, was 60s? It was okay.
Okay, in the 60s, maybe it was more so. Yeah,
okay.
and it probably wasn't so scuzzy in the 60s.
Okay,
I would definitely give it that. But no, you should come up to Toronto area. There's some awesome stuff up here.
Well, I seem to know an awful lot more Canadians than I know Americans, to be honest.
Well, there you go. We've got, for pity's sake.
Yeah.
Hang on. Ladies, take over for a minute.
No, it just seems like everybody I work with seems to be from Canada. Really not great people. And then like a lot of my online friends are Canadian. So Carl he used to do a podcast. I don't know if he's still doing it. It was a conspiracy podcast. There's a guy, he goes by he's either known as Dumbass or Parrot. And,
okay.
And he does a podcast, The Amateur Skeptics, and I've worked with him quite a bit.
Okay.
So like I said, it seems like any of my office. I mean, what was interesting is that now I work in Downers Grove. It's like a suburb of Chicago, and there's a diverse group of people there. I mean, you got, I don't want to start, because we got, because there's the Canadians, there's a bunch of Middle East, those that do the full thing. Some are not, it's just this mix of people and different, which is really neat. But like when I was in Texas, there wasn't that much diversity, or even California, where I was working in Bakersfield. That's not exactly a diverse crowd there. So it's kind of weird. I, go from town to town, but it was like when I was in Detroit, I actually a couple friends who had lived there. They were driving through town, so I met up with them, and we went into Dearborn, which is a really
Muslim stronghold.
Yeah, and it was so cool. I really loved it. I really liked it there. It was like the food was awesome, and because she's used to be a Muslim. I think she converted from one to Muslim, and then she became an atheist. but you knew all these places, knew all these people, and it was really cool. And I mean, I'm kind of, I'm weird because I do like, you know, I'm a loner. I spend a lot of my time with books and stuff like that, and I don't really socialize too much. But when I do, and when I start getting into these different, different people, the different, because like in Dearborn, I mean, you had everyone from just they look normal, like normal to me, to the full, the full whatever, fully covered,
Yeah.
and it didn't really bother me much. I thought it would bother me more because I'm not exactly. I don't want to start. I'm not a racist. I'm not. I don't. But it's like there's the people I normally deal with. Then I see these people that are different, but then it's like they're just the same. I mean, just from what they're, just because their outer coverings are different than what I'm used to.
Your exposure isn't as varied as those of us that, well, I'm a loner too. I stick pretty much to myself, but our exposure to different things in different cultures is limited.
Right.
You would enjoy Toronto, Mike. It's very, very international and cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Like when you go to Chinatown, you feel like you're in China.
Well, that's kind of like what I got in Chicago. I mean, actually, if you walked across Chicago, if you dared, okay, there's some bad neighborhoods, but you can go, and it's not just you got the Chinatown, but you've got you'll go like block to block, and the signs in the windows and the road signs change from it could change from Chinese to Greek to
where I lived in Boston, and I lived just outside of Boston in Alston, and there was a four-way corner, like kind of sort of around the block, and you go to the left up top, and that's your Irish enclave. Then the other side would be general white Americans, for lack of a better word. Go to the right, and you have your Oriental. It was primarily Korean, but there was Chinese and Japanese mixed in. And on the other side was Jamaican.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting during the World Cup. The one year I was there, it was like they were partying in the streets. You could tell when the Irish won. You could. It's like, it was really wild. Even it was more eclectic. I mean, in Boston where I lived, there were like 5 colleges. I mean, major colleges. I wasn't that far from BC, so there were like some major colleges there and most of these kids were students. Most of the people there were students. But even in Buffalo, where I lived a couple miles from Kleinhan's Music Hall, not in the heart of downtown, but in what's known as Allentown. I was just outside of there, and you had basically the LGBTQ community there. You also had we had a growing Hispanic population where I used to live, but I had moved from there. And then you had your lower income HUD housing type people. Wasn't really a racial division there. It was a mix of races, and it was just really weird. The like here it's just white rednecks.
Oh, and Carrie81 said that there's a huge Lebanese community in Windsor. As a Michigander, it was the place to go after turning 19. Yes, because of course you can drink at 19 in Canada, not 21.
Yeah.
And if you go to Quebec, you can drink at 18, which, when we were in high school, seniors, and we went on a road trip to Quebec, everybody was like, woohoo, I can drink.
Yeah.
Legally, as opposed to, getting your older sibling to go buy you beer or stealing it from your parents.
I'd have to grow a mustache and beard. Well, the beard I had kind of down, but the mustache part is a problem.
Oh no,
Yeah.
like your older sibling that was 19 would just go buy it like for themselves, but give it to you. You know,
My brother is basically, for all practical purposes, a minister.
Yeah, I know.
Although he does drink. Well, he drinks beer, but
right. So, Mike, were you religious ever? And if so, what flavor were you?
I want to say I was kind of unique on that front also. I mean,
Cool.
it was like we were a Catholic family. My dad was a devout Catholic. I don't think my mother was Catholic, but she converted. We were kind of forced to go to church and all that kind of stuff. But it really wasn't a forced. We were forced to go to the church, but beyond that, if you know, my parents kind of let me go, or all us kids go whatever direction we felt like going, and so I pretty much gravitated away. Uh, Not because because where I live, well, it's hard to say exactly the makeup of where I was growing up, but there was definitely, I'm going to say about 50% Catholic, 50% Baptist.
Ooh.
There were a few
Mennonites.
I think there's some Mennonites. Not, but again, going through school, going through, everything, all the stuff, going through high school, doing the junior college, all that kind of stuff. Religion wasn't all that important. I never really latched on. There was a brief moment when I did get into some of the ancient alien stuff.
It's tempting. It's tempting.
Yeah. But it was pretty much, of course, at that time, I was I call them my lost years. A lot of alcohol, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Pretty much hung out, drank, smoked. Didn't get into trouble though, but after a while, that kind of wore thin, and yeah, I got back into school, got my degree, became a electrical designer.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And pretty much then kind of focused on career. A lot of my hobbies. I was a gearhead. I loved working on cars and see how fast I can get my little Oldsmobile Cutlass going. All that kind of fun stuff. All the and but then I had to buckle down and try to play adult. Yeah,
that adulting thing is annoying.
That's overrated, I know. Don't grow up if you have, Yeah,
if you can avoid it, don't grow up.
Yeah.
And I just want to say hi to Lost Reality Radio that's over in the Spreaker chat. They've got a bunch of stuff, and I'll maybe hopefully get to some of your questions over there in a minute. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I never really.
Never really caught on.
It never caught on, and I never really thought about it until actually until I started getting into skepticism, and I started thinking about things, and it's like the big thing I know within the Catholic is, and I'm sure I think all the religions, that the concept of original sin, and I'm like,
yes,
what the, why? How does that happen? How does a baby being born makes the kid a sinner?
Yeah.
I love that little meme. There's the little baby, and it says, "Original sin. What the fuck did I do?" How did
yeah,
that?
And the baby's looking all like got the what the fuck face. And, yeah.
and that really kind of solidified, and that's really where I stand, or what drives me is that this idea about original sin. Just never, that's what really didn't make sense. And then everything else kind of fell into place after that.
And to me, God supposedly is the one that put the tree in the garden in the first place, already knowing what would happen if he did that. So, and also, how was Adam and Eve supposed to know it was wrong when they hadn't eaten of the tree that would tell them what was right and wrong?
Right.
Well, it's like the one meme that says that, we'll give you the disease and the cure at the same time, but you're going to have to pay for the cure.
Yeah.
And then if you think about it with original sin, I think one of the things that got me, thinking about it more so than normal is that with original sin, it also says in the Bible that the curse of the father doesn't pass down to the curse of the son.
Well, then later it says it does to like the 4th generation or some shit. So
so it's like there's
you can't make up his fucking mind. So what tipped you over into, I guess, atheism and skepticism and all that from just like, I don't really buy that?
Well, the big thing, like I said, because the religion wasn't as important, I am a real history nut. I love history.
Me too.
Yeah, for those who are watching this live, there's my library. That's my history. That's all history. I've got every subject from, and I do kind of gravitate toward World War II, Civil War, but there's some modern stuff in there, and the stuff I've been reading, and I start hearing about, and it was the Pearl Harbor conspiracies that kind of got me started, and I started doing more and more research. And like I said, if you can't tell, those 2 middle shelves plus some of those books up top are just Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
I've got my 2 go-to books was At Dawn We Slept by Gordon Prange and The Rising Sun by John Tolan.
And that was a phenomenal book.
They're right there. I love those. Those are my go-to.
Tolan was good. I like this stuff.
Yeah, because these are when I started, I use these as my basis. So when I start hearing things about, the Winds Decrypt and all the discussion about that, the bomb plot, I started researching some of this stuff, and I've gone as far now. The books on the I don't know how there's a 7-volume set up there of all the Japanese decrypts by Magic, and in there is the Wind's message. I tried to get to the source of some of this stuff. I've got photocopies of newspapers from the 1940-41, and I'm going through all this stuff, and basically a lot of the conspiracies about Pearl Harbor, about the that the Wind's message was received. There's actually no evidence whatsoever. These are people who basically made a lot of stuff up whole cloth. John Tolan, with his Rising Sun, is a really excellent book, and it really gets into the Japanese side, and he studies it. So does Prange. He was in Japan interviewing a lot of these the participants, but Tolan goes off the deep end with this the USS Lurline and the Seaman Z, and he does that in his I think it was in the Infamy book, and he says that the Lurline had been receiving these codes from ships northwest of Hawaii, and he was convinced that this was the Japanese fleet using their radios. According to the Japanese that were there on the ships, the radios were disabled. They could not use the radios to communicate. They could only receive. One of my other hobbies and interests is electronics and radio, and I knew about how radio waves propagate across the globe. So, and I know that the real to determine the distance and the direction, you actually have to use a great circle map. You can't just use a flat map like you would find in a geography book, or something you'd buy on from a bookstore or whatever. You have to use a map that is just set up as basically it's a polar map. Like if you were to look at the Earth from the North Pole. And I started taking that information, applying it to, and I've come to the conclusion that Grogan, that was the radio operator on the lure line, what he was hearing was actually the Japanese transmitters sending out the messages to the fleet to tell, to give them reports on, everything. Everything was put out on the airwaves for the fleet's, standing orders, so on and so forth. And of course, the attacking fleet needed to know if the diplomats in Washington had made a breakthrough and was able to lift some of the sanctions, because if that happened, they were going to order the fleet back to Japan. Unfortunately, that never happened, and the island was attacked. But it was just going through those contortions, figuring that stuff out, that it's like, wait a minute, there's a group of people out there who, for whatever reason, and at the time I wasn't really sure what they were doing it for. What purpose is it to say that, or to make up lies about the attack on Pearl Harbor? But there's these people like at least from the what would be some good names from the Pearl Harbor. But I started realizing that there are people out there who will misrepresent, they will lie, they'll do whatever historical events, and to for some, I would say, a political mean. That's what I've been discussing. John Flynn, he was a writer for I believe he was an independent writer, but he wrote for like the Chicago Tribune and I believe the Washington Post in the 1930s, who was anti-Roosevelt. This guy just totally, anything that Roosevelt did, he was totally opposite. And he actually wrote the article that kind of triggered many of the conspiracies. And it was right in the Chicago Tribune. Literally, I've got the article. It's the signing of the signing of the armistice with Japan, and right next to it is The Secrets of Pearl Harbor, and by John Flynn, and it lays out a lot of this stuff about Washington knowing and so on, and none of it was true. And so it was like, I go, well, what's going on here? Why was Flynn so ticked off at Roosevelt? And I kind of come to the start finding things like, well, one, he was expecting to be getting an appointment in the White House. He never got that. He had signed, or he had been the writer of the one of the acts after the First World War, the Munitions Act, or it was the procurement laws that came out of the Gerald Nye Committee, and believing that there was some what was it, price gouging by the military suppliers, those who were supplying the military. So new laws were put into place about how the U.S. would procure its weaponry. And that was written by Flynn and then introduced by Nye in Congress, and it passed. But when as Europe was kind of started its slip, dealing with Hitler and Mussolini, and the United States was trying to find ways of basically trying to help England and France to deal with any potential problems, but their hands were tied because they couldn't make the munitions. So they started bending the rules, and Flynn thought it was an affront to him that they came up with they wrote the laws, and now they're kind of overlooking them. There's a lot of little things, and Flynn was, I guess they considered him a liberal, but I think today we'd call him a conservative. So it's a weird. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and then I read the Chariots of the Gods, Van Daniken's books, and it was compelling, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I started again researching that, and it's like, well, wait a minute, the scientists aren't saying that. These are these.
It's like you go down, you look at one thing, and it leads you down more and more rabbit holes. Now you deal more with historical revisionism than I do, and one of the things that you said was that the more you looked, the more it didn't really make any sense. And with your background in electronics and understanding the whole concept behind radio transmissions and stuff, do you find that the dishonesty or the conflating or the connecting the dots that don't form a straight line, as I said, with conspiracy theories in general, you'll start here and end here, whereas those that are not of the conspiratorial mindset will draw a straight line through all the dots, but others will go all over the place. Do you find that a lot with historical revisionism, especially like I know there were some conspiracy theories surrounding especially Pearl Harbor and well, obviously the big one, Hitler's not dead. Well, he'd probably be dead by now. He'd be like in the but
there's going to be a time relatively soon where no one can say the guy is not dead finally.
Yeah, unless he's immortal, and I have heard that.
Oh,
yeah. Do you remember, I think it was the Wesley Snipes movie, I think it was Wesley Snipes, where the spirit jumped from the living to the dead to the living. Yeah, it's that. It's that whole I can't remember the name. That movie used to intrigue me. But
no. Hitler is off somewhere having banana sandwiches with Elvis. Just so you know.
Yeah.
But do you find that conflation or that intentional misrepresentation is present with historical revision, or are they just looking at history from a totally different, for lack of a better word, I can't come up with a better word,
Yeah.
Are they coming at it from just a totally different angle, or are they intentionally misrepresenting?
I would say yes.
Intentionally
it's both. It's both.
Okay.
Because you've got, because I've seen, well, of course, a lot of times it's, like from the start to end, but they really more or less work from the end back to the start.
Yeah. They start with their conclusion and then work back from that.
Right. That's the classic, pseudoscience, any type of, now there's some that I think, again, they have an agenda, what would be a good? I'm trying to think of a real good example. There's the book "None Dare Call It Conspiracy." It's one of those I guess, the Bible of the conspiracy world, as far as this New World Order, the Illuminati type of conspiracies.
The fact that there is such a thing is scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And the book pulls these different stories together, and they kind of mash them together because communism's bad, and these socialists or liberals or even conservatives, they in this book, they don't really make any designation between any orientation. It's, this guy is he's a communist because, whatever. And, again, if I could talk hours on None Dare Call It Conspiracy, all the stuff that's in that book. It's like, and it's the communists. Well, really, the communists and Jews. That seems to be the problem with these people.
Yeah.
That,
well, even like I follow the anti-vax movement and this pseudomedicine, pseudoscience, alternative medicine, and when you rip it down to its root cause, that whole communist plot, or in some instances, especially with the anti-vax, a Jewish plot, that it really does underlie it. And it's like, seriously, dudes? It's like,
or cultural Marxism.
Yeah, that's a better word for it.
Yeah, they call it cultural Marxism, or Jordan Peterson's line is the neo-Marxist postmodernism, which is not a thing because they conflict with each other.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what the fuck is that? Considering they conflict with each other, it's like people that call President Obama a communist Muslim
atheist.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, dude, they conflict. You can't be a Muslim.
Yeah, but it's Jordan Peterson. He's so smart that he can just say whatever he wants and expect people to believe him.
Well,
it sounds scary.
It's not even Peterson. Yeah. I mean, you take him out of the picture because really, I mean, to me personally, I've actually listened to some of his lectures. I've listened to some of his psychology lectures. I listened to some of his before this whole debacle started within the past month. And I'd be like sitting there staring at my computer, wondering, what the fuck did I just listen to? But I've listened to other speakers in the same vein. And I think Morgan, it's like what they're saying doesn't make any sense because it's not a thing. And
yeah,
like one of the pieces of historical revision that caught my attention a couple of years ago was the whole sinking of the Titanic and the alleged exchange of the Titanic with the Britannica.
No, the Olympic.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I had
an old one, and
it was actually at the time it was new to me. I had never heard of it.
And the thing is that what unfortunately tends to lead credence to the idea is that the early newsreels that went on about the launch of the Titanic, because of how difficult it was to shoot video in those days, the footage of, at least some of the footage of the launch of the Titanic actually was the Olympic. And you can tell, number one, because somebody went in frame by frame and scratched the name Olympic off the ass of the ship. So there's like this morphing glob across the end of the ship in every frame. And then the Titanic had enclosed patios instead of just a balcony. And so where that is visible on photos of the actual Titanic, but in the movie, the newsreels, that enclosed portion is not there because it's the Olympic. And so see, it was in the video when they launched the Titanic, it wasn't really the Titanic. Well, no, because they were just substituting newsreel footage because nobody was there to actually film the fucking Titanic because it was 1912 and cameras were fucking expensive and hard to use.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's really interesting is that when I started to I kind of gave up because history is not really my thing. So I give people like Mike and others who delve into this historical revision. Now, of course, like with anything with David Barton, that's a different story for me. But like you take your interest in World War II specifically, it's like I don't think I would have, like, you know, you have your 7-volume set there that I would not have the patience to go through that stuff. And I find, you know, and I've mentioned it before, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. You for every paragraph you have to quote debunk, you're going to write 10 pages to do it, or 10 paragraphs to do it. So I think with actual historical revisionism, such as World War, you know, issues surrounding World War II or the Titanic, you got to have a lot of cojones to do it, because the patience you need to do that kind of stuff is just, it's phenomenal. I mean, you were just in a little bit, you were explaining, you know, this, and I'm like, I don't have the patience for that. But yet I'll sit and read a lot of law cases coming out my ass, and I'm
which I couldn't do.
Yeah.
Oh, and Trav says that the movie you guys are talking about was called Fallen, and they love that movie.
Ah, yes, Fallen. Thank you, Trav.
There you go.
And
they also said, I knew Jews were going to be brought up eventually.
Well, conspiracy themes.
When you talk conspiracy, they get mixed in. It's a...
Or the Rothschilds.
Yeah.
They'll say the Rothschilds, which is code for the Jews, or the East London Banking District. And I'm like, okay, we know what you're talking about. Like, go ahead and say it. It's, yeah.
Yeah. International.
The globalists.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Go ahead.
I was going to say, coming from your perspective, Mike, because you delve more into the historical, why do you think, or evidence for, why do we always, in these type of conspiracies, if you know, always quote blame the Jews? I mean, is there something that's ever stood out in your research that has like pointed you in the direction of why that's so?
Well, there's actually a number of trains of thought there, and actually I just discovered another one about a month or so ago, and it actually stems, it is religious driven.
Yes, it
where the evangelicals, even though they you know, Jesus was a Jew, all that kind of,
we love Israel.
We love Israel. There's always been animosity toward the Jew. There's a number of in medieval times, because of now how do I explain this? There was the Christians and Jews had a symbiotic relationship as far as money went, because of usury laws, the rules about charging interest. When a kingdom, whatever, had to buy or do any money exchanging, they, to do that exchange, you normally charge some sort of interest, because the Christians followed that. I mean, the Muslims follow that too, and they still follow it today. But the Christians, because a Christian to Christian exchange, you couldn't charge interest, but you bring a Jewish person in to be the middleman, then you could charge. Then he can charge the interest, because it wasn't so they wedged themselves into as middlemen, and they would actually do these exchanges whenever there was a war and one side lost. They have to pay ransoms to get their noblemen back. That was usually done through an intermediary Jew to make those exchanges. So what was happening was that these Jews were making a lot of money making these exchanges. And of course, the king would then decide, you know what? I don't want to pay the Jews anymore. So let's kick them out, uh, call them heretics, put them in front of the Inquisition, or we'll ghetto them, all this kind of stuff, and or claim that they're witches and have them burnt. This has been kind of ingrained in European the early European history, and it still manifests itself in the early 1900s. And there was the Russians had written it was a hoax document, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion.
Yep, Peter Kling latches onto that, and a lot of your conspiracy nuts do.
Yeah, and they use that as their that this is the blueprint of the Jewish takeover of the world, and basically it was I believe I've heard different stories, but it's possible came out of Russia and about the time of the revolution, right around the time of the Russian Revolution, to try to divert attention from the Tsar and make it the Jews being the problem. Of course, that document found its way around Europe. It found its way. It went to France first, then to Germany, England. It found its way to the United States, and it had a benefactor in Henry Ford. Henry Ford had it printed and handed to all his employees.
Oh.
Well, in Philip Roth's book, who just recently passed away, in his book, The Plot Against America, he actually, while his book he revises one part of history for the plot of the book, but the conversations and the documents mentioned within the book are legitimate as far as, historically being said, and the views of Ford. He actually brings that point up in one part of the book when Lindbergh takes office. It was Lindbergh, of course, against Roosevelt that you mentioned in the beginning. And it's funny because it has actually been proven to be a hoax document, but man, they swear by that document.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everything seems to be based on it, and but then you got on the other side and I've been studying eugenics, and again, this is a pseudoscience, the belief that certain human trait, that certain social traits are also inheritable, and so things like the feeble-minded, basically, and to be judged feeble-minded, there's a whole list, and it actually it really targeted poor white women, that women that had a unnatural sexual interest could get you branded feeble-minded. There's of course there's criminality, prostitution, what was some of the other fun ones? Epilepsy was also thrown in there. There was venereal disease that would get you judged feeble-minded, and this eugenics movement was trying to basically what Hitler eventually did. It actually there's actually the U.S. tried to get the sterilization laws, and Virginia. I actually read this. It's a Supreme Court Buck v. Bell case.
Yes.
Yeah. And how Oliver Wendell Holmes, three generations of imbeciles is enough, was his comment. and how. And there's actually a book just on this case about Carrie. Carrie was raped and by a cousin of the house she was living, this family she was living with. She was kind of like I don't know if they called it foster care, but she in Virginia, southern Virginia, or the South mainly, but Virginia. Many of the poor whites would, and those that were feeble-minded who had kids would end up sending their kids to, more wealthier homes. Well, Carrie Buck, which is who the case was about, had been living with I forget the family name. I'll remember it probably here in a little bit, but living with this family. But instead of being like a foster child, she was pretty much a slave laborer, doing all the chores around the house, doing all these chores and all working for the family. The family would rent her out basically to do other chores at other homes, and but she was a very bright kid. She always had good grades, good marks in school, but then all of a sudden they took her out of school. She became pregnant, and then the family wanted to kick her out. So they brought they had these, I forget what they called the committees. I think it was a committee on feeble-mindedness, and basically a judge, a doctor, and I forget if there was I think a social worker. They would do it. They would examine the subject and recommend her or determine if this person was feeble-minded. And it was, even though she had great, good school grades.
Did they even have a definition of what feeble-minded was?
There really wasn't. It was just anything socially unacceptable at the time. And
whatever they didn't like.
Or any physical defects or deformities or anything of that. And then they also would have lunacy commissions as well, right, for the judge. And again, the definition of lunacy was kind of, it depends on what they wanted to.
Right.
That's sort of like in the Victorian era when they said women were hysterical.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, but that would get you judged feeble-minded.
Well, to bring that forward, even to today, or within the last 8 years, the whole eugenics movement and the psychometric movement, where I think you've all seen the meme where if your ring finger is bigger than your index finger, you're a male. Well, guess what? Or you've seen the slam against Michelle Obama that she's really a man. That's all based in that whole idea that you can tell by physical characteristics whether somebody is, and that's what Hitler did. And and it's something that was, I won't say prevalent, but it was here in the US back in the early 1900s.
Well, they got the idea from us, really.
Yeah.
They got the idea from American doctors, because it did start over in England, but then when a lot of English people were just, at the time, they just weren't really into it. And then when they started going, obviously speaking towards in America, it caught on over here. And then people started becoming more interested in it. And you were talking, Beth, about how this ties into some, conspiracies today. What makes me think of is, the thing that I'll see from the alt-right and the alt-light all the time is this idea of white genocide. And it's not necessarily that, white people are being murdered in the street. It's that, oh, well, white people are marrying people of different races, and that is diminishing, the white race. Again, it's going back to that whole, it's Hitler's idea of a perfect society that they're implementing. I forget that it's like Wife with a Purpose or whatever is saying go and have as many white babies as you can. And it's
racist asshole that I debated, which actually Morgan, he had me back last week again. He's glutton for punishment apparently. But yeah, that racist bastard, he was getting on my case because I didn't want children. And he was saying, well, oh, you're betraying your womanhood and your duty to your race and all this shit because I don't want to have, nice white babies. I'm like, dude, for all you know, if I had decided to have kids, I may have, I think brown guys are really attractive. For all you know, I could have hooked up with a brown guy and then you'd be fucked. So, but that was huge. Like, that's woman's job is to perpetuate the race, and you're doing a disservice to your people if you don't perpetuate their. And when I say things like, I don't care if white people get absorbed into some, mixture of people. Like, I don't fucking care. He was like, oh my God, you're betraying your people and how horrible. And I just, huh?
Well, what I find fascinating with the whole eugenics and the psychometrics and it can be traced to Hitler, but what a lot of, and this is part of the question I had asked Mike earlier, was that this movement, this whole eugenics and white race, and the displeasure with Jews and Jews primarily, but communism, it actually even predates Hitler, because I mean it does actually start back in the early about 1050 AD, where it became more prevalent that Christians hated Jews because they blamed the Jews for the death of Jesus and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And it perpetuates from there. And it just shows that the ideas and the notions that we have today with that underpin, to some regard, a lot of the conspiracy theories aren't new. I mean, we can take it back into history that you and I learned about in school, i.e., Hitler, but it actually predates even that. There was a piece that I wish I would have known we were going to hit on this. I would have dug it up, but there was an article I read that actually really delves into this whole Jewish conspiracy notion of why they get blamed, and Mike touched upon it a bit, dealing with the whole banking. Because during the early 1900s in Europe, Jews were very limited in what they can do. And the only thing by law that they could do without any repercussions, so to speak, is banking. So they excelled at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and I said to Buddy, because of course he's anti-Semitic as well. And he's going on about IQs and some people are just naturally smarter than others and all this bullshit. And I was like, and he's telling me, Jews are subjugating countries all over the world. And he couldn't tell me one that they'd actually done that to, but, and I was like, okay, so assuming that they're just, they have their fingers in everything and they're trying to control everything and they're controlling the media and they're taking everybody's money and subjugating all these. Well, maybe they're just that smart.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
he was going on about, well, white people are better because we invent everything, and so that's why we should be preserved. I'm like, well, maybe Jews are just that much smarter. He didn't like that very much.
That's pretty bad.
Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, our favorite troll from last week, Chaos Theory, is back. So Trav's having fun, and also Clockwork Rex has been having some fun with Chaos Theory over in the chat. So there's that. And Lost Reality Radio has some interesting things to say about the Illuminati, and saying that Illuminati equals there is no authoritative definition of this actual group, and we already know that the quote on the books Bavarian Illuminati trademark, but for the most part the true real dark masters who are the Illuminati are called this because they do have knowledge, which makes them in their dark power still enlightened. Knowledge is power after all. That's a new one. So Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, the Illuminati generally refers to those of the Enlightenment.
Okay.
So we got guys like um, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Paine.
Mm,
All our founding fathers were followers of the the Enlightenment. These
yes.
are actually the Illuminati. The Illuminati created this country. These are people who were part of the Enlightenment. They brought these new ideas of the Enlightenment. The Bavarian Illuminati was a real group, just like the Masons and so on. And these were people who took ideas and they debated them, they discussed them. Our Constitution is an Illuminati document, and of course, if these are people who oppose the Illuminati because of whatever nefarious reasons, well, you're just not American. You are rejecting everything that America stands for, everything that was put in our Constitution. The original document is an Illuminati document, and if you are against the Illuminati, you're against the United States. So if anybody who's listening to this and wanting to troll, that's the fact. That's the real fact, and that's what they don't want you to know. They want you to think that these are people of nefarious. They want to do whatever. Eliminate the population.
In the shadows.
Also, anybody who's like remotely famous, they think is part of the Illuminati, which is amusing. It's like, oh, Bill Gates is in it, but so is Beyonce, and it's like, okay, what?
I'm in the same level here.
I think Mike makes a good point in that it's not a hidden secret that our founding fathers were part, some of them were Masons, some of them were part of this Enlightenment. And, they think that the Illuminati and the Masons were some secretive group, but it's well known and it's documented within the history books. Like, the Bavarian Illuminati was an actual group that after, about the 1800-ish, around in there, it kind of disappears. But it disappears because they basically disbanded. It wasn't, I won't say it wasn't necessary, but the root of what they were trying to attain, especially here in the States, was attained. So there was no need for them in a sense. But it's not something that's, nefariously hidden in our history books that we weren't taught. I mean, the American history I was taught in high school was, basically, did we delve into, the nuts and bolts? No, but yeah, it was known that the ideas that Thomas Paine, etc., brought over from Europe were of an Enlightenment type. But like Morgan says, now you have people claiming that Bill Gates and Beyonce and Lady Gaga and
George Soros.
Yeah, I mean, whoever
went to a barn.
Or my favorite is when they do this and then they equate it. This is the one-handed sign for "I love you," but then they equate it with this, where the thumb is actually crossed over and up, which is allegedly the sign of Baphomet, and you could obviously see in pictures that some of the con nutters post. It's like, no, they're not doing this, they're doing this. It's like, I mean, everybody who they are against is doing this. And it's like, seriously? Well, it's a good example, and I just wrote about this the other day, was Joel Osteen and his wife. Their son graduated from the Texas
UT. Yeah, it was University of Texas, and
I mean, this happened like a year or two ago, and they were photographed doing the Longhorn sign.
Yeah, gig 'em. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Reich was epileptic because they were like, oh my God, why is Joel Osteen doing Sign of the Devil? It's like, that's this Longhorn.
Well, I think also because it used to be like a rock on kind of thing, like back in the 80s.
Then you have this. And then you have this. It's like, oh my God. And this is what I mean by connecting.
Okay. And the one I'm seeing now is going, the OK is now a white supremacy sign. When did that happen?
Well, they started that as a joke. They were like, oh, it's a joke, but then it became a thing they actually started doing.
Yeah, it's actually kind of hidden. There is documentation of it being older than what it is now, but it's become more of the in thing, like Morgan says, is now they're. But it's funny. I was going back through a couple of God, don't ask me why I was doing this, because I have no clue why I was doing this. I went back through some of Trump's speech, and every single speech he does this sign. And I just find that really weird.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they started doing that because of Trump, and then they were like, oh, we'll make this into a white power thing, or if it was like, I don't know if it started because they noticed Trump did that, or if it's because, like...
He does it all the time.
He does, but I
was
don't know if he's done that years ago. Has he done that years ago?
Yeah, but not as prevalent, but he has some quirky, for lack of...
Have you seen the accordion? He'll do that.
Yes, I love that one.
Well, it's just like me with the hands. And when I mean, even when I used to do my other show, we didn't have the visual, and my hands would be flat. I mean, you think I was Italian, but it's like we all have those quirks, and that just happens to be one of his. And I think a lot of it comes down to, and this is just my personal opinion, is that because his vocabulary isn't as strong as everybody else's. I'm trying to be nice.
Why?
I think it's to emphasize. I don't know. It just came out that way. Emphasize his points because he doesn't have the vocabulary that normal people have.
It's limited. Okay.
Hey, as long as it's great.
Melania can speak a bunch of languages at least. I mean, she's got a thick accent, but she does spades over him.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, I don't know off the top of my head what his pre-college educational level was and how strong it was, and I think it has to do with it more of a social and a cultural thing, because I know, like, if I were to compare my high school to the high school where I live now, there's
also he didn't have to try. Like, he's the son of like a rich dude in New York City.
Yeah,
he have to like apply yourself in anything.
Exactly, and it's rumored that
if he started failing, somebody would go visit his teacher with a fistful of money and be like, I think Don's doing a little better this term, isn't he?
Well,
that's how Jared got to Harvard.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that it's always been stated that Trump does not, and I'm not trying to pick on Trump here, but he does not read. Far, like, I will go through anywhere from 2 to 5 books a week, depending on what I'm doing. But I'm constantly reading. Even if I'm not reading a book, I'm reading something online. I have ebooks. So I'm always reading. And Morgan, you're in college and just finished law school. So, of course, and I know, Deb, you do, you might not read a lot, but you watch a lot of video. He does not do, or doesn't appear to, do things that intellectually stimulate him. Now, of course, he's supposedly a business maven, and which could explain it. So I think there's a bit of
not even really that, because I was reading an article where it was saying that basically he had, this is back when he was, you know, before he was in office, obviously, and it was some kind of business thing, and it was they had some proposal for some new way to finance something, and he didn't want to read any of it. He was like, unless you can get it in like bullet points on a single page, like I'm not interested in like getting your pitch. So it's like, and then I've always, thinking of conspiracy theories, I have seen the YouTube video going around that like they think that, where they thought Trump could not read at all.
I don't think he can.
Well, I don't think that's true at all, but I do think that he just doesn't like to, or doesn't feel like he should have to, or
it could be that it was always like a challenge for him, so he only maybe does it when he absolutely has to.
Yeah,
like maybe, you know, if he has to read a couple of paragraphs to sign or some shit like that, he's fine with it. But like the other day with that note from fucking Kim Jong-il, he is like, oh yeah, it's very nice. And then they're like, oh, what did it say? Oh, I haven't read it yet.
But it was very nice. It could have said "fuck you" inside.
And I think leading back into the whole conspiracy idea is that because of his lack of want for, you know, to be generous, because he doesn't read and doesn't intellectually stimulate, he's the type of person, in my opinion, that would fall for these conspiracies.
Well, yeah, he is a conspiracy theorist.
But the whole thing, it kind of gets excuse me, shut down. As I know conspiracy theorists who are much more highly educated than I am. Take over.
Yeah, it's yeah, but I do see what you're saying, because I have seen where it's like, you know, I'll see like what I would call, I guess, more low information conspiracy theorists. So people like Trump, or people who sit there and watch Fox and Friends all day, and you know, they're like, oh well, it's, you know, the deep state's all out to get us and all this other stuff. But then I've also seen where people will, you know, they'll be pretty well read, but they'll, I guess it's their attempt to like sound woke, I guess. So they'll be super into the ancient aliens and into the like, oh, like woo-woo nonsense, or even like hoteps. Like, yeah, it gets there.
Like, well, Mike, what do you think about that? My kind of theory is that a lot of people that are really heavy into the conspiracy stuff, and especially if they're atheistic or agnostic or what's not on the religious question, they haven't learned how to get rid of that religious mindset. So they're processing these ideas in a religious sort of way of thinking, and they still have that need to feel like they're extra special. Like religion gives you that, well, I was made in the image of God, therefore I'm special. So when they glom onto conspiracy stuff, it's, well, I was smart enough to see through what the big conspiracy didn't want me to know. And so I'm special in that way. Does that compute for you?
A little bit. I've been trying to study this, that kind of question. Who is more susceptible to conspiracy theories? Who will believe, or what they will believe? And there's been studies. There's, of course, some psychology papers that I've plowed through. There's a lot of, and really, there's, at least if I was to report on it right now, from what I know, there's really no anything to indicate this person's is a conspiracy, versus non-conspiracy. Conspiracy people that believe in conspiracy comes from all ranges of education, from high school all the way to college. I mean, many of the anti-vaxxers are, they hold master degrees, or even doctors themselves, or hold PhDs, and they believe in, that the vaccines cause autism. And on the same token, a lot of of these folks they seem to be more like the who believe like there's an Illuminati, or there's the reptilian overlords, and the ancient aliens. They kind of may be lower education, because they, again, I think there is a connection with religion. And I used to do I was involved with this the Bitch Spot report. It was a atheist political thing, kind of a conservative atheist show. And I always tried to stress that, as religion dies off, and that's what I believe, that, I mean, religion's dying. I mean, I think we're looking at a lot of the death throes that, when you get a guy like Ken Ham, who tries to keep the creationist ideas. You got those select people, like Arizona apparently is. I don't know if they passed it, or they're in the middle of passing to teach creationism in their schools.
Yeah.
There's, these are these death throes that they're looking at. I mean, the word Christmas is I think, one of the death throes of the religious. They're trying to make up a story. There's, I don't see where Christmas is being subverted by atheists.
There's no war on Christmas.
Yeah.
We aren't going to have a conniption if someone says Merry Christmas. Most of us don't actually give a shit.
Yeah. I mean, I throw the two. I mean, I usually do say Merry Christmas, but if someone says Happy Holidays, I say thank you, Happy Holidays. That type of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's no. I have no difference in what you call it, but then again, the Christians seem to be latching on to this, like it's a, that this it's a personal attack on them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm kind of reminded. There's the book Idiot America, James Pierce, who talks about, you got these. Was it Ray Mumford says? We're being attacked by the intellectual elite of our country to take away our beliefs, things like that. The intellectuals are taking our beliefs away, and so this is the type of stuff that, if you're really devout, Christian, whatever religion you are, that it's made into an attack by atheists. Atheists are attacking the religious. Well, really not. I don't really care. I don't care what you believe in, personally. I mean, I don't throw my atheism around. I mean, I'll do podcasts and say, yeah, I'm an atheist. I think religious people are batshit crazy. I would happily say that, but in casual conversation, it'll be, oh, okay, yeah. So you believe that the Earth's only 5,000 years old. Good for you.
Well, I think it brings out a point that I made last week with one of the trolls. Is I have, for myself personally, and I think Deb and Morgan are probably on the same page, but I'm not speaking for either of those two. But for myself, is I don't really give a shit what you believe. I only have a problem with it when you try to legislate it.
Yeah.
And next week, Morgan and I and Deb are going to discuss the recent SCOTUS ruling. That's why we really haven't said much about it today. But I have no issue with what a individual person believes. No problem. But if you try to legislate that, that I have to tie my shoes a certain way because there's a pink unicorn in it, then I have a problem.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to, like, and I've mentioned this before. I mean, if going to the whole critical thinking, and there are studies, and I hesitate, and I still do to this day, to say there is a intellectual difference between those that are devoutly religious and those that are atheists. But it's science is leaning towards that way. But when you have a platform for the Republican Party, and this is primarily in Texas, and I've mentioned before, in their 2012 platform for the state of Texas, they do not want critical thinking taught. And the studies now are beginning to show that those that are much more educated or free thinkers, or think for themselves and don't have things shoved down their throat, are usually of more intelligent. And the more education you gain, the less likely you are to lean on religion. And I think that's why you get a lot of the conspiracy thinking with a lower education level. And I think and well, I don't think, I know, I mean, it's in their platform. It's an intentional thing by the ultra extreme far right, or what I call the right. And I think with conspiracy theories, which really throws kind of a kink into my idea, because there are PhDs, there are doctors and nurses that are anti-vax. I deal
There's
with
a lot of atheists who are conspiracy theorists.
and there are a lot of atheists that I know. I know a couple of atheists that are anti-vax, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, well, look at Bill fucking Maher.
Yeah, Bill Maher, who is like one of the poster boys of atheism.
And the fucking anti-vax nut job.
Well, and the thing is, I actually wrote I think I did 2 posts and 2 videos concerning Bill Maher, and I've personally have never really been a fan of his.
Yeah,
but and it's just, I'm really weird when it comes to comedians. If I don't get the joke, then I'm more of the Ellen DeGeneres type comedian and Whoopi Goldberg. I get some of their stuff, but I have no sense of humor, really. It's just like,
you do. It's
my thing with Bill Maher is he's just such a he's such a dick. I don't know. I just can't, I don't think being a dick is really funny. Well, that's just my thing.
Bill Maher, people like Bill Maher come off as contrarians.
Yeah, and it's just and I think that's part of this conspiracy thing. It's like trying to be contrarian to everybody else because you want to feel special and you want to feel woke, and I think that is part of it.
And I've noticed that there tends to be a lot of 9/11 truthers that are atheists for some reason.
Well, Deb, you and I know one of them. We've actually gotten in arguments with him on his show about it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
one of the first times I went to when Ali Rizvi released his book, it was the first book reading signing I went to, and it was at CFI. So it was a very small, maybe 20 people, because it was just CFI members. And there's a guy with his 9/11 truther shirt, in the back. And this is to promote Ali's book, The Atheist Muslim. And Ali read from the book and talked about the book. He comes up with, do you talk about the lie of 9/11 in your book? And Ali's just like, I mentioned that 9/11 happened.
It's like, how do you, at the time when 9/11 happened, I was actually at my old job. I used to work for a sintering company, and basically we take powdered metal and we bake it at a really high temperature. Part of it is to make it harder. So it's like the first thing when it came over, because we had a TV in our break room, and when it came over, a bunch of us, I remember we looked at each other and said, well, yeah, they softened the steel because of the heat. It was like, and that's basically what it boils down to, is why. And it's just like, we just all looked at it because that's what we did for a living. That was our job. And I know there was a report that came out. I don't believe it was government sponsored. It may have been, but that was basically the findings, that it didn't melt per se. It softened the steel, and that's why it collapsed. But it was just like, yeah, we figured that out the day it happened. Because that's what,
Yeah, the NTSB study
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking it's like I mean, we would actually take parts that were quote too hard, and being in certain functions, if you over center a metal gearing part, it'll become too brittle and it will fracture. And we had special tests that we have to do. Part of my job is quality control. We would do all these tests to make sure the parts, were in specifications. And if it was too hard, in some instances, depending on the type of metal used and the chemical composite of that blend, we could recenter to soften it, to bring it back down into specs. So it was just like, it was a no-brainer, but it always baffled me especially with the truthers, that being one of their notions. And it's just like, I could never understand it because, like, for me, I don't consider myself a skeptic per se, but people say I'm very skeptical. If I don't understand something, I'm going to look it up. And if I still don't understand it, I'm going to find somebody who has a higher level of education than I do to at least give me a hint. I'm going to use Morgan as an example. Her and I will sometimes banter back and forth about law cases. And my friend Deanna, who's been on our show, and I don't know if she's still in, her and I will banter on some stuff that I post on my Facebook, because I follow a lot of the legal cases dealing with LGBT rights and First Amendment issues. And she's like, well, no, you got to look at it this way, because she's a former lawyer. She did that for a living. It's I might not always agree with her because I see it from a different perspective, but knowing, her okay, call it an appeal to authority, but her authority being that she did this for a fucking living is much higher than me sitting there reading a report. Oh, well, case in point, there was a report about cannabis that came out. It's 400 pages. No, I have not read it yet. But one of the bloggers I follow, called Skeptical Raptor, who worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I forget in what capacity, did a review of this review. And it's like, okay, now I want to read the review. And he warns, it's really highly technical. But at least if I do have questions, I know somebody I can go to and say, explain this to me. It's like, how difficult is that?
Because I don't even think that's like and I think people are just I think part of it also is, oh well, I don't want to do this like appeal to authority thing. And I think they misunderstand is the whole appeal to authority fallacy is just trusting somebody because they're just a general authority, like, and just believing like whatever they say because of that status. But then, like, relying on expertise is not at all, I don't think, the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's just like creationists that pass out their 200 that survey thingy or document. They have 200 scientists, none of which are biologists, on creation.
Some guys like, I'm a dentist.
Yeah, they have a few of them on that list. But yeah, that to me is
creationists are actually, when you see a list of creationist scientists, I bet you like a full third of them are dentists.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh every time.
But well, this brings up a question too. Mike, with the historical revisionism that you deal with, is there an appeal to an authority, so to speak, that you find with those that like to revise history? Like, do they...
Actually, I don't see that. I don't see that within the revisionist group, because they're throwing themselves out as the expert, that they've been able to reassess history. They're taking what, of course, one of the big ones is Holocaust denial. They claim, the claims, but then, of course, again, a lot of it's been debunked, but there was always these, they say like, because the door from the gas chamber in Auschwitz what came from a different building. This is all staged, so it was all make believe. Okay. Considering that the Russians tore through Auschwitz, rescued everybody, probably when maybe wonder I don't remember, or if the Germans had run off and left them there. But anyhow, they, they're going through, they're tearing trying to rescue people, so on. Stuff gets broken, so when they go to put it back together to create a museum, yes, things are going to get mixed up. But of course, the revisionist says, well, this since this door that was supposed to be over here instead of here, it's all fake.
Yeah.
They talked about the Zyklon B not being able to using it as a gas. Well,
it's like the piece I did on debunking fluoride being used as a sedative in the gas chambers and stuff. And it took me, for just this one little meme, it took me I think it was 3 weeks of research, reading the original documents. And what I found kind of interesting is that there really were no experts or authority on the revisionist side, but yet on our side, for lack of a better word, there were, reams and reams of documentation, how this doctor says, well, no, fluoride does not have this effect, yet. And that's what I find with the historical, there doesn't seem to be experts, so to speak, or appeals to authority. It's all,
well, they're trying to make themselves into the experts and become the, and they'll be the go-to guy that gets called to the conferences and to sell the books and so on. I mean, Eric Van Daniken,
yes,
he made himself out to be this expert on ancient aliens. Well, he was before he wrote that book, or I think about the time he was writing that book, he had just got fired from his job as a hotel manager. I think it was something because he defrauded some.
He had just gotten out of prison for fraud.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like with Zachariah Stitchin with the ancient aliens, and I see this a lot because ancient aliens is related to the Nephilim, depending on which proponent you follow, but everybody purports him as an expert in reading the ancient language, and he has absolutely no linguistic training.
Clue.
And but yet when somebody who is an expert was actually said to Stitchin, please show me where you are getting this. He refused to. This was while he was still alive, obviously. He refused to do the debate because he could not translate what was written, because he had, and his opponent was like, well, this is what it says. And he goes, and here's the dictionary to prove what I'm saying. His whole idea. I mean, they have, I think it's up to 13 volumes now of the Akkadian language that the Sumerian tablets were supposedly written in, and they have translated it. So it's up. I think it's up to 13 volumes. I think it's slated to be 18. They're still finishing it, but they have the references to refer to. And here, I mean, everything that Sitchin supposedly translated was in actuality very wrong. I won't say completely wrong because I'm going from memory, but but he puts himself off as an expert, and he's not. I mean, he has no. I mean, yes, you can be self-taught. I'm not saying that someone that's self-taught, but he was nowhere close. And same thing with Van Daniken.
Right. Yeah. Because if we go to like Alex Jones, because I find that a lot of his stuff, I can find reference to some other conspiracy writer. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jim Mars, who is pretty famous for JFK and some of his
Also, the actual Mars alien bullshit. Richard Hoagland's another one.
Yeah. Yeah. See, the funny thing with Hoagland, he was knowledgeable, but for what I'm trying to, I was trying to, actually, I was talking to, actually, I did an interview with, all right, I don't do too many interviews on my show, but I did have Stuart Robbins. He's a scientist. He does a exposing his pseudo astronomy podcast, and the nice thing about his show is that he explains the physics. He explains everything and why Zachariah Sitchin or Richard Hoagland or whoever is wrong. And talk, his, talking to him and a lot of his, when we were talking about Hoagland, and he didn't really want to talk about it. That was probably he's already had run-ins with the guy, and him and his homunculus, what's that, Mike Barra. And because from what I understand about Hoagland, he was actually I think he was a consultant to CBS News during the moon programs. He was really well grounded in science, and he had apparently on the Voyager there's that disc that they put on there with the the two humans and and he had a role in that too. But when the face on Mars was found by oh man, what was the Viking mission, and they spotted the face on Mars. Hoagland was trying to lobby to get NASA, let's get something up there and take a closer look at this thing because it's really cool. It's something, it may be sign of life. And for some reason, well, the obvious reason is funding. There was no way to fund another mission to Mars at that time. And no one really seemed to be concerned about this because they knew that the resolution of those photos was so low that rock, that could be anything from a rock, volcano, extinct volcano, something, but it was certainly not a structure. But then Hoagland takes that and started doing this special math that he invents to say, well, there's this rock here and this rock and this structure here. So this is like a whole city right here. And of course, a lot of then that's when he started slipping into the pseudoscience. But, there's guys, Alex Jones, from what I understand about his biography, going through his biography and the information on him, he was always kind of crazy.
Alex never
surprised me.
He was the Waco, Oklahoma City bombing. He started with that, and of course he started. I think he was. It almost sounds like, and it's like if you listen to his Joe Rogan program or his interview, you'll see.
I haven't heard it, but I heard that Rogan got him stoned.
Yeah, he was drunk and stoned. I watched the whole thing. There was definitely Jack Daniels sitting there on the table, and I think even Jones says, he wasn't smoking, but I think he got a contact high off of what they were smoking in there. So
he didn't inhale.
Yeah. But when you get him, it looks like if you get him drunk and stoned, you'll start seeing more of what he really believes. And this is.
Can you imagine that?
Because I started taking notes, and I was like, "Am I really hearing this? A demons from a 4th
I'm
or
gonna
5th.
have to watch this now.
Yeah, he's talked about that on InfoWars, though. Also, he's
Yeah, he's really gone into the religious symbolism of late. I've noticed.
Yeah.
And I can only listen to Alex in short bursts, so like it'll
Well,
take me 30
What
days
was
to
it
get.
about a year and a half ago or so when we did our first show about conspiracies, and I actually went and watched a whole episode of Alex Jones, and I had to pick one where Pastor Manning was his guest,
Yes.
and oh
that was
my
the craziest episode.
oh, it was like I just like, will you two just go get a room? Like seriously, just like go have sloppy sex somewhere because you know you want it.
Nuttier though, Pastor Manning or Alex Jones?
Pastor Manning.
Oh, that's
I would say
hard
Pastor
one.
Manning too, but
I think what is so
But Pastor-
perplexing.
Well, he did the same thing with
Manning-
Trump.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was saying,
Manning
dude, just suck his dick and get it over with, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Pastor Manning is obsessed with semen and gay sex, though,
And lattes.
and latte. And-
Starbucks.
yeah, but Jones is obsessed with a whole bunch of wackadoo shit. So
That is true.
I think he might just edge out Manning just for variety's sake. But
I think Manning's more like, I don't know, I guess he's like, he has his obsession with semen is so deep, it seems like weirder. But then Jones, like you said, it's more spread out. So it's like whether you're
yeah,
What I
played or a deep dive.
what I find interesting with the more common that we hear about in the news, Alex Jones being the primary one, is that if you really look at it, they are intelligent people. And Mike alluded to this in that if you go through some of Jones's pieces, his references to actual newspaper articles or studies are legit in the sense that they do exist. Although there are a couple
them wrong and
exactly, and I never like dealing with historical revisionism. I never quite understood how, and this ties into interpretation of the Bible as well, is how could two people look at the exact same passage, for lack of a better word, and come up with two utterly discordant opinions.
This is how I know there's no God, because no deity who's, omniscient and omnipotent could write a book so shittily, especially when it's supposed to be the most important message for humankind. Like, there's just no way that he's going to do it that poorly. Just not gonna
I actually posted a meme today along that line, and it's just like, and taking that into the whole conspiracy thing, or the ideology behind it, and stuff, is like, how can I use Zechariah Stitchin and Mike Heiser, who is a scholar in ancient languages, how can they look at the same Sumerian tablet and come up with two totally opposite interpretations, where Mike has the educational and the academic background to actually support his ideas, and Sitchin has none, but yet people gravitate towards Sitchin. Or in Alex Jones's case, he has the citations, but his interpretation of the citations is totally polar opposite to what you and I may get out of it. I just find,
and it's not even an academic disagreement. It's just like complete, off the wall stuff.
A thing you got to remember about Alex Jones is a lot of the stories he quotes is stories that his people have written.
Yeah, like Prison Paul and all that. Yeah,
right. So he'll because I've actually tracked a couple of these where he posts a story. It gets picked up by usually, well, Russia TV might pick it up. The Russians, Sputnik News, that they might, and then another site would pick it up, and then some reporter who I'm assuming they have to be like, oh, I don't have a story this week. Oh, here's something neat. Pulls it up, creates a story out of it, and then Jones then reports that. See, the mainstream news is reporting exactly what I said a week ago. Well, yeah, because you wrote it.
Well, and like LifeSite News, which is a anti-abortion site. That is exactly what they do, and I never really noticed it with Jones. I never really actually delved that deep into his reporting ideas, but like LifeSite News, and you sit there and you try to track back to the original story, and it's like, I'm back at LifeSite News.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they have a whole network. It's LifeSite News. They have like the Drudge Report. They have
it goes to
Fox News. I mean,
Daily, and it's like, or it goes to Barber's site, or it's like one big old circle jerk, and it's like not one of them has the gumption to actually find out if they just pick it up and re-report it. And my favorite is I don't know, can't remember the specific site, but a lot of these sites will, Natural News is notorious for this. So this is Erin Health News, she does it too, is they cite their own articles as reference to the article. It's like you're citing yourself, and there's no original sites in the article you're citing, so you're citing yourself again, and it just goes back, and you can't. It's like trying to find the original article where they may have misinterpreted the conclusion of the study or something. It's like, yeah, it goes back to the whole 10-to-1. I mean, the time you have to spend, and I think this is a lot of why these conspiracy theories or alternative history catch on, is that not many people have the patience to track it back to the original source. And then they catch on and they get re-reported by these, like Alex Jones and Prison Planet, which is part of Alex Jones, Prison Planet, or Natural News. They're just reporting on shit they reported on.
Right.
And it just, to take it back to that original, people don't have the time or the patience. They just go with what they see.
Yeah. I know from researching the Pearl Harbor, and I came across, there was, you had John Flynn, that I talked about, John T. Flynn, the journalist. Then you had Father Charles Coughlin, who was a Catholic priest in Detroit, who had been an anti-Roosevelt supporter, or anti-Roosevelt, and Henry Ford. And then I found that all these guys were generating stories, pro-German stories, to try to keep America out of the war. And basically, they shared those stories with, because Coughlin had his newspaper, I think it was called Social Justice. The Detroit Free Press was Henry Ford's outlet. Flynn had his in the Tribune, and again, I think the Washington Post. Then there was, of course, and a lot of these stories actually, some of them actually originated in Germany and was put into that cycle. Basically to keep America out of the war. Then there was the counter. The Brits were trying to get us in the war on their side, of course. And they produced a lot of stories, and they had used like Walter Winchell as a source, or either that, or to endorse what was being printed about the evils of Germany. There's I actually got a copy of it, an original copy of this book that went out, and it had a map on the back of all the German bases. And actually, they talk about you'll see it on some conspiracy shows. They'll talk about I think there's actually a show just on what Germany was planning to do to the United States. A lot of that stuff on that show is fake, generated by British intelligence. There was a two-pronged attempt. One was to get Churchill and the government was trying to negotiate, see what they can get from the United States. If it, that's how we got, where the Lend-Lease and so on, those programs. But then there was the covert that was trying to make it look like Germany was establishing air bases in South America and were prepared to attack or bomb the United States from South America, which was never true. But that's the when I found that, and this was happening in the 1940s, 1930s, 1940s, and they're still using it. So it's an effective tactic for these guys. They can keep their stories moving. Jones will copy a story from Natural News, and then apparently a lot of the InfoWars stuff comes out of Russia, RT and Sputnik, and and then those stories get regurgitated around the conspiracy, the show circuit. And so guys like Jones, Glenn Beck,
Beck,
there's Michael Savage. There's some lesser ones. There was a guy, Jeff Renz. He does kind of a coast to coast like George Norrie, but then he throws some conspiracy stuff, a lot of Illuminati, Nibiru stuff. And that just keeps going around the circle. It keeps, and keep those stories moving. It fills up their websites. They fill up their, their podcasts and their radio programs. And keep bombarding. It's almost like a positive reinforcement. It's not really negative, but it's positive reinforcement. You keep hearing these stories about how bad Obama is because he's a Muslim and he's, he faked his birth certificate and he's born in Kenya. And you keep hammering that theme over and over again. Guys like Trump will believe that. And he's used that. I mean, I thought it was weird that he ran again, because he was pretty much shouted down when Obama released his birth certificate. So I was thinking, or maybe it's because we forget after 4 years. So he came back, and but he actually kept reinforcing that I got Obama to release his birth certificate. I did this. I say I'm saving the world, type of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's a great world. We got a great world here, and we're gonna have a great country.
Well, he's taken the Goebbels ideology of, if you repeat something long enough and loud enough, people are going to believe it.
Right.
And he's run with that. And I think what it is, like, when I don't remember if it's when he won the election or the nomination, he goes, "Well, I've never run for president before." It's like, dude, you ran like 2000 or 1996, 2000. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah,
you have run for president before, and people are like, "Oh, he's never run before." I was like,
He just believe it because of how he says it, and
and then I find, I don't want to say low information voters. I don't really like that term, but it basically is the truth. There was an article where one lady actually admit, "Well, how did you learn about the candidates?" "Oh, I went on Google and I Googled in the name and I read the first 5 stories to see what people were thinking." So the reporter, or I don't remember if it was an actual news report or if it was a blog posting, but so that's what the guy did, and the first 5 choices were all pro-Trump or right-wing leaning sites, and it's like they were basically all from that right side bent. There was nothing contrary to dispel, the BS that was there. And it's like that's how you gained your knowledge of the candidate. And that's how you voted. And she goes, "Yep. I wanted to see what the people were thinking." And it's like, okay, you just basically echoed the echo chamber. It's like people don't delve further in, and it's just like one of the arguments I have is, yeah, like, okay, well, I don't agree with the whole Kim Jong Il Un scenario. The good that has come out of it is that North Korea and South Korea may be talking. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be a good point for Trump. Now, please tell me, what has he done for this country? What good? And they're like, well, he's done this, and this. And I'm like, and how has that benefited you? And one of the big things is the tax scam of 2017. I like to refer to this one because I found out what my benefit was. I get a 72-cent raise every 2 weeks. That's how I've benefited from. And I'm like, so what's your benefit? And they don't know. And they're like, well, 72 cents is good. I'm like, that's every 2 weeks. That means I get like 36 cents a week.
Yeah, and how much did the billionaires get?
Yeah, and they're like,
tax-free jet.
How much did their bosses get? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like they don't look past the what's flashed on the front page, whether it's pro-Trump or anti-Trump, whether it's liberal or conservative. And it's like, and that seems to be like, I'm in a couple of the conspiracy groups, anti-vax groups and stuff, and it's like one of my biggest things is I don't have the patience to keep arguing the same prats over and over and over again, and I get frustrated and leave. And I know and I give kudos to some of my friends who do this day in and day out on their, not only on their blogs but on their personal Facebook pages or their pages. And it's like, how in the hell, I mean, over like David Gorski, who writes for Science-Based Medicine, he used to do way back, 10, 15 years ago, he was into the whole Holocaust denial stuff. That's where he cut his chops, as he puts it, into the conspiracy stuff and debunking. And I actually had dug up some of the old postings, and it's like, how, I mean, and every day he was debunking the same shit over and over. I mean, again, well, the Titanic being one like that pointed out, you can easily explain why, because cameras being expensive, yada yada yada. But that's nothing's ever good enough. It's like anti-vaxxers want the perfect study showing that there is no risk in vaccines, but yet you don't demand that of car seats. Kids still die in car seats in car accidents.
So we're just about pretty much done here, but we had such a good talk. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was dying to ask Mike, what do you think is your most ridiculous conspiracy theory you've come across?
Oh, the most ridiculous.
I was going to say your favorite, but I don't know if you can couch it in terms of favorite or not. But
well, my favorite is the Pearl Harbor stuff. The craziest stuff is the stuff that I heard about from Joshua Abraham. That again, it goes into this. He does this Bible prophecy, and I'm not that.
Oh, Bible prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, I stuck my toe into that type of stuff, and I just can't get it because it just makes no sense. And
And
because
to
there's
me, any prophecy could be self-fulfilling if somebody wants it to come true badly enough.
right, because there's
You know?
David. Yeah, David Mead has been playing this. I mean, the end of the world stuff. I mean, there was the eclipse here in the United States that was supposed to be the
Yeah.
start of the end of the world. Then he comes up with another, and it was all
Aren't we supposed to? Isn't it supposed to end again in a couple of weeks on the 24th or something?
something like that. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get out my apocalypse card again and scratch up.
Card, yeah.
Yeah, about every 3 to 6 months. Yeah, the Earth is supposed to end. So according to Mead, and he'll just change it because I didn't carry the one and I didn't do whatever.
He's really bad at math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because because he based the eclipse one. I forget which passage in Revelation it was. Like 12 something, and it had to do with the moons and sun, or the sun eating the moon thing. And that was whatever, the moon eating whatever that was, and whatever. And I'm like, and you get eclipse, end of the world from that. And and then it just like I felt like I was in Scanners and my head's about ready to,
So if that was your favorite, what do you think is the most ridiculous?
Well, I would say the David Mead, the end of the world, his end of the world, because
I'm kind of partial to the reptilians myself. I don't know. That just seems beyond ridiculous to me. But
my favorite one was when they thought JFK was going to rise from the dead and be the Antichrist.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that one.
Antichrist are we going to have?
A lot.
Accordingly.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It's a lesser known one, but I remember hearing something about how that was a conspiracy theory, and I was like, dear Jesus Christ, there's a lot to unpack there, and none of it's good. You should just set the suitcase on fire.
I know, eh? Time flies when you're enjoying yourself, but we're kind of at the end already. So, Mike, thanks for coming to join us. And I know it was kind of short notice, but we appreciate it, and that was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I had a blast. So
excellent. And the chat was hopping, but we had our little chaos theory troll in there who was trying to tell us that atheists have no morals, but that's a whole other. I think Trav even gave up on that one, but
I'm amazed that somebody, a person who claims to be a religious person, and there's this religion where you can let's see, prostitution. There's some of these devout Christians who have been caught, in gay relationships, pedophile relationships.
Yeah. Oh, but according to this person, they weren't following Jesus; they were following religion.
Yeah, following Jesus is a religion.
Oh, and Morgan, to your story about the resurrected JFK, Clockwork Rex said, "I thought that was Elvis."
There might have been one about.
I think he was talking. Oh, I'm thinking
about Elvis too. Who knows?
Oh, Morgan's getting spot.
No, I got.
Here we go. Thank you there. Don't crap out yet.
Yeah, try not to. But there's been a bunch of Antichrist theories. They think every fucking president's the Antichrist. It's insane.
Oh, I know. Well, as long as it's not one of theirs. If it was one of theirs, then I guess, I don't know.
Well, they thought it was Ronald Reagan. So, one contingent did, because he had each of his names has 6 letters.
Oh, fuck.
Well,
hey, that's enough evidence for me.
Kink into this.
Oh, yeah.
There are some right-wing ultra-religious that think that Donald Trump now 6 weeks ago he wasn't, I can't remember what
Oh, but now
is the Antichrist and are
What made them flip?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Didn't they vote for the Antichrist? That's
yeah.
it's over to Syria.
Something I can't remember what it was, but something
Syria.
he said or did.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Syria. It might have been, but something he said or did, or a policy he made,
or maybe the Israel thing.
I can't remember, but it was just like I'm like I remember reading it and thinking, but he was your savior a minute ago.
Yeah, well, either way, they don't care as long as they think it's going to bring Jesus back faster.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's a small contingency that even believes about Trump. Most of them still think he's their savior.
Yeah, this was like, I think this was like a one-off, not one of your more well-known. I'll have to look for the article. I know I still have it.
The thing is, people, the Bible said that Jesus was going to come back in the lifetime of the people in the Bible.
But Deb, they could still be alive.
Oh. I know they're hiding.
Oh God, that's actually a theory that they are still alive. I was kidding.
Oh no,
that is actually a theory. Well, what it is that the current it gets into the whole new Reformation theology where they think that those that they call apostles are direct what's the word? Not lineage, direct. Kind of like how the Pope is chosen, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that so those apostles, technically, by their thinking, and there's a lot of.
I was gonna say, I was picturing because the Falun Gong followers believe that the originators of Falun Gong from 2,000 years ago are like living in caves secretly somewhere because they don't like how society is, but they're there. They're like 2,000 years old. So I'm like, oh, so the apostles went to go hang out with the Falun Gong guys hiding in their magic cave because the world sucks and they just want.
Do you remember that scene in the one Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, where he meets one of the
the Holy Grail and the keeper
Charlie.
There's actually people that that do believe that is true.
Clockwork Rex says the conspiracy I love is that Cain is still alive because God made him immortal.
Yeah, I mean it runs the gamut.
And the Mormons have the 3 Nephites who God made immortal, and they run around performing miracles for Mormons.
Yeah,
get that Botox.
Yeah.
Well, and just think about it. Just what we've talked about in the last 5 minutes. This is the mindset, not of all, but within the conspiracy or the quote skeptical community. And then you have people like Mike and some of the other bloggers I know that attempt to debunk this stuff, and the job is never going to be done.
Oh no.
No.
I did in my early days. I did my 9/11 show was, I believe, 5 episodes, like a half hour each. I did a Kennedy, and I think I did 5 of those plus a couple of follow-ups. You know, and I even interviewed. There's a guy, James Lambert. He has a documentary on the Kennedy. And it's actually neat because he actually talks to the people who believe in the conspiracies and actually shows them on camera, and you know what they, you know, how they react when they say, well, you know, you pose the question and then they defend, you know, they defend themselves. It's really neat, a really neat documentary. And the thing is, I keep hearing over and over again the same, you know, like the 9/11. You know, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. You know, the same stuff that has been totally debunked, and you know, it's never gonna, you know, it's, you know, I don't think it's ever gonna end. And really, in that book, Idiot America, they talked about Ignatius Donnelly, and one of his writings was about Atlantis. that. He believes that it still it existed, and and he pointed where to find it. Well, that was written in 1880 in the 1880s, and it's still, people still pick that up. Hey, Atlantis exists. They're out searching for it.
I know.
So it
it's never gonna go away, but all we can do is try and mitigate the damage, I guess.
Points refuted 1,000 times, Prats.
Yep. But we got to get out of here, folks. So again, Mike, thank you so much. Tell everybody, please, where they can find you and your show and all that fun stuff.
Okay, well, my main website is mikebohler.com, Mikebohler.com. You can also find my podcast, A Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy, on iTunes. I think that's all where I keep it. It's not a great show. You might be a little bit disappointed because I'm very monotone in my talk and stuff like that. There's some of the feedback I get, on my voice. So it's not a cognitive dissonance show. I mean, it's a bit dry. Okay. So may not appeal to some people, but so I don't put it on Stitcher because I don't want to chew up somebody's phones.
It's fine.
I should probably.
I took in a couple episodes this morning. It's fine. It's good.
Okay. But anyhow,
it's entertaining, and it's what the thing is it's not overly long, so you get the news, you get what needs to be told, and you don't linger on it. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I switched from doing normal stories like I'll take a topic like 9/11. I'll do a whole. I'll either do a single show or a whole series of shows. But doing the news, because the nice thing is I got a conspiracy guy in the White House that is, he's spewing so much stuff out, and it does seem like there's an uptick on people who believe in conspiracy. So it actually, I think the news format works pretty nice, and there'll be occasions where I'm hoping to do I want to do a show on eugenics. I want to do a show on GMOs. I want to do a show on dirty electricity.
I did one of those.
Yeah. So, and since I'm an electrical designer, I can throw a lot.
That's right up your alley.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, there's enough to keep you busy for a very long time, I think.
Very long time. Very long time.
Awesome. And Beth, where can we find you?
Well, I want to thank Mike for coming on, because I think we joke about conspiracy theories and how crazy people that fall for them are. And I think the more light we can shed on the thinking and what kind of theories are out there is important. So kudos to you, Mike, for doing it, because I know no way in hell I could do it. I dabble in it and I follow it for, other reasons, but thank you for joining us tonight. But easiest way to find me is Dune998. That connects to my blog, and
that's a Twitter address, by the way.
Oh yes, that's on Twitter. Yeah, not that Gab, which is alternative to Twitter for those that have been booted. I just discovered that this week.
Oh, you found Gab?
Yeah, I haven't joined yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to. But that connects to Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge for Facebook, YouTube. I haven't put anything out new on YouTube. I'm working on something. And join us next week, because we're going to talk about the SCOTUS ruling that came down today in the Phillips Baker case. And it's a mixed bag. It's, from what I can tell, not quite as bad as we think it is, because it is very narrow. And the Reich is just having a field day with it. So I have a lot of articles to go through tonight.
They're ignorant and they don't understand what actually happened. But
yeah, basically that's what's coming down. But there have been a few on the right-leaning side that actually feel that the ruling is dangerous.
Oh.
So that's kind of intriguing. I haven't delved into it, so I don't know exactly what that entails. But Morgan is planning on being with us next Monday, so we're gonna delve into that.
Nobody better run over any shit around where you live, because no more outages. We need you to be able to do the work that you need to do, and we need you to be able to come on the show. So notice,
or you're gonna get a lot of me next week.
Notice to all people in the vicinity of Oxford, Mississippi, keep your goddamn cars on the road, okay?
I'm gonna make a sign. Keep your car on the street.
Yeah.
And Morgan, where can we find you?
All right, well, you can find me on Twitter at Mostring. That's Mostring. You can also find me on the By Skeptical podcast on iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher with the lovely Trav Mamone. Comes out about every 2 weeks. So we just did our episode on just news roundup of what we call hot messes. Ambien is a hell of a drug.
Isn't it, though? My goodness.
That reminds me, I don't know if you or Trav saw the comment, and I don't remember on whose feed it was on or if it was to By Skeptical specifically, but one of your commenters applauded you for that episode, by the way, and for your podcast in general. So,
yeah, good job.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I mean, if everybody just needs to stop being so messy, but yeah, it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, well, it was Roseanne. I mean, how high a bar could we set?
Well, I mean, it was her and then Elon Musk on Twitter, and then just like everybody was just losing their damn minds. It was what a time to be alive.
Yep.
Well, you can find me on Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, which airs Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. with Shuj and Tribble and our motley crew of panelists. And of course, you can also find me on Full Quranic, where I read the Quran so you don't have to. And that's www.fullquranic.com. And we will be here, of course, next week talking about the SCOTUS ruling and what it means and all of that with our newly graduated legal here. And I don't know, maybe we'll see if there's any other interested and educated parties that want to weigh in. I don't know. Would Deanna know anything about that stuff? Maybe she wants to.
She may. I will.
Maybe Deanna wants to drop in. We'll have a legal fest next week. So, but definitely the three of us, and we'll see who else we can rustle up to join us and talk about the SCOTUS ruling. So there is that. And just a quick thing, I was going to mention this at the beginning of the show, and we got swept away by conspiracies a little faster, and I forgot to mention it, but in talking about the show last week with Glenda and how she was talking about when she is approached by men and when they think that there's a chance that she might have sex with them, she's the best thing ever. And as soon as they realize that she's not going to have sex with them specifically, they just turn into monsters. Just 2 days after our show, she was walking to her car. And again, what she said is she gets harassed more when she's just out and around and not when she's dressed up for work, which Mike, you wouldn't know, but our guest last week is a go-go dancer in Las Vegas. And so, she was just dressed regular, going back to her car. She got catcalled, and when she ignored them, they threw rocks at her car. So, yeah,
wow.
That's exactly like what we were talking about at the show. And it's all about not just that, she's not having sex with somebody, it's them specifically. And that's when, she's the most beautiful woman in the world when they think that they have a chance. And then, as soon as they know they don't, you're a slut and a whore, and I can do nasty things to you now. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted to mention that, and she's fine, and her car wasn't even really damaged. She said there was like marks in the dust where she could see that it had cleaned the dust off, but it didn't actually hurt the car or her, thankfully. But she posted about it and just kind of said, yep, here's what I was talking about. So yeah, that shit's real. And yes, Clockwork Rex, that is pretty fucked up. You said. But anyway, until next week, we will leave you with our human creed for mankind. And we'll be back to confuse you all with legalese. Well, Morgan can make it make sense to us, I think. I hope.
Oh, anyway. I hope so.
Put me on the spot. It'll be good practice,
Yeah. I'll be like, I think this is what they mean. I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
We'll see.
All right, folks. Until then, have a good one.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.